This is Ancient NBA, where we cover every NBA Finals there's ever been. This week's video is on the 1959 NBA Finals. But first, we have to go back a year. The Minneapolis Lakers have just finished last in the league, winning only 19 games in the 57-58 season. Fans weren't coming to games as often, and the franchise was desperately looking for someone to help their former dynasty get back to that championship status. And with the first pick in the 1958 NBA draft, the Minneapolis Lakers select Elgin Baylor out of the University of Seattle. They didn't know it yet, but this man would be one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Meanwhile, in the middle of the country, Bob Pettit and the St. Louis Hawks are celebrating their championship win over the Boston Celtics. 2 years ago, Boston beat St. Louis in the finals for their first ever championship, but in 1958, the Hawks returned the favor. Bill Russell had gone down with an ankle sprain in Game 3 and was unable to play the rest of the series. He was more focused than ever, knowing his team was capable of a true dynasty. But the legendary Bob Pettit had just dropped 50 points in the last game of the finals to solidify the Hawks' first ever championship over the Celtics. And now, Pettit was trying to will his team to a third straight finals appearance. St. Louis was also dynasty hunting, having appeared in the last two NBA finals and winning one of them. They still had a good group of players easily capable of going back. Cliff Hagan, shout out University of Kentucky, had led the playoffs in scoring last year, and the former Laker Slater Martin was deep in his Hall of Fame career. Pettit felt good about their chances as they win the West with a record of 49-23. But this year, they'd had some real competition in the West as the Lakers finished second at 33-39. Elgin Baylor had single-handedly willed his team from last place in the NBA. He scored 24 points a game as a rookie, the most complete player anyone had ever seen, and Bob Pettit, along with the rest of the league, could see that the Lakers would soon be the most formidable team in the West. As the 1959 playoffs start, Minneapolis would take on Detroit again in the first round. Winning the series 2-1, they would once again face St. Louis in the Western Division Finals. Minneapolis was hungry for revenge as St. Louis had beaten them out of the playoffs 2 years ago in the Western Division Finals. Over in the Eastern Division, the Celtics continue their domination of the league, winning 52 games, the second straight year at the top. Bill Russell knew as long as everyone was playing their games, this league was theirs, and this year they had a much better chance of stopping St. Louis from taking their potential dynasty status away. As Russell continued to get better, he and the Celtics would start the playoffs in the Eastern Finals against the Syracuse Nationals. The Nationals finished 35-37 this year, third in the East, but they'd beaten the Knicks 2-0 in the first round. They had a guy named Dolph Shays, a very good scoring rebounder, and Boston would find out the hard way that he was a Hall of Famer. The Nationals put up one of the best fights the Celtics had ever seen. Shays was on a tear, leading almost every game in points. The Celtics had been hit in the mouth in the Eastern Division Finals, and Syracuse pushes it to a Game 7. But the Celtics, on top of having a guy who was psychopathic about winning in Bill Russell, were the deepest team the league had ever seen. Tom Heinsohn, Bob Cousy, Frank Ramsey, anybody on that team could score as many as you needed, including Russell. So the Celtics win Game 7 by 5 and are headed to their third straight NBA Finals. They'd had a wake-up call, letting the last series get to 7 games, so they were focused and ready on whoever would come out of the West. It would either be Bob Pettit and the St. Louis Hawks, who had been there the last 2 times with Boston, or Elgin Baylor and the Minneapolis Lakers, who nobody really knew about at this level. The Celtics were very familiar with the way the Hawks played, and felt comfortable this year if they had to face them in the finals. From worst record in the league a year ago to now competing for a chance to make it to the NBA Finals, Bill Russell was watching Elgin Baylor closely, knowing he had the potential to be great. The rookie Baylor would lead his team into St. Louis for Game 1 of the Western Division Finals, but these were the defending champion Hawks. Cliff Hagan had a habit of leading the playoffs in points. In this game, he dropped 40, absolutely annihilating the Lakers by 34. Elgin Baylor scored 21, but the rest of his team was made up of the same guys who only won 19 games last year. So Baylor would have to will this team to win, basically by himself. Bob Pettit realized Baylor's potential was the Hall of Fame, but he was still a rookie on a losing team. Pettit was beginning to believe this would be an easy series, ahead of what could turn into a third straight finals appearance against the Goliath of Boston. But Baylor had other plans, coming out in Game 2 on fire, dropping 33 points and leading the game in rebounding. Elgin had gotten his first Western Finals win, and now that he knew what the game was like at this level, he would have to keep up that fire. But Bob Pettit wasn't going to let a rookie bounce his team from the playoffs. He led the Hawks back to Minneapolis, where he dropped 39 on the Lakers. And Cliff Hagan led the rebounding game with 18 boards, demolishing Minneapolis in Game 3 by 30 points. The Hawks are now up 2-1 on the Lakers. Elgin Baylor's task was immense, as he was going up against several Hall of Famers. And in Game 4, Cliff Hagan would again go off for 38 points. But Baylor pushed back with 32 of his own and 12 boards, finding a way to push his team to their second win of the series. Now 2-2, we head back to St. Louis. Bob Pettit wasn't going to get beat at home, dropping 36 points, but Baylor was right there with him with 36 of his own. The Lakers end up winning the game by just 1 point. Coming into the playoffs, nobody thought anyone in the West was capable of beating St. Louis. They were just too deep. They were the defending champions. There was just no way a team with a losing record could beat them. But the Lakers were up 3-2. And if the Hawks were again going to make it to the finals, it would have to be through Game 7. But first they'd have to win Game 6. Back to Minneapolis we go, where Baylor knows he's going to see the very best from the Hawks, who are now facing elimination. But St. Louis comes out unable to shoot the ball well. Pettit and Hagan drop 24 and 22, but have horrible shooting nights. Unlike the Lakers, who shot 46% on top of Baylor's 33 points, barely making it out of Game 6 with a 2-point win over St. Louis. Elgin Baylor had done it. He had given Minneapolis a chance at becoming a dynasty again, but nobody was thinking about years from now. Right now, the Lakers were on their way to Boston, where Baylor would have to go up against even more Hall of Famers. Bill Russell was ready to take on Bob Pettit for a third straight time, but he'd get a rookie Elgin Baylor. And in Game 1, Baylor proved no one could guard him, dropping 34 points. He and the Lakers had caught Boston off guard, and although Bill Russell had 28 rebounds, they would only win the game by 3 points. Baylor had fired his team up, and though they'd come close to stealing a win in Boston, the Celtics had been here twice already. They weren't panicking. They knew Baylor might be able to dominate, but nobody else on this team was a problem. In Game 2, Baylor was tired. He shot 2 for 17 on the game. He did go 9 for 10 from the free throw line though, dropping just 13 points on the game. Against 9 Hall of Famers, that wasn't going to cut it. The Celtics comfortably win Game 2 by 20, behind Bill Sharman's 28 points. Now we head back to Minneapolis, where the Lakers are down 0-2. Elgin Baylor was realizing he couldn't do everything himself, and if they were going to win this series, his skill alone wasn't enough. The Lakers would need some luck, but all he got was bad luck. Again, shooting a terrible 26% on the game. The Celtics weren't missing the beat. Russell was on his game, 3 players scored 20 or more for Boston. The Celtics had this one wrapped up. Baylor now knew what it was like to play in the NBA Finals. It was the same game, but the intensity was on another planet. Now all he could do was try to squeak out a win and avoid Boston's broom. But in Game 4, Bill Russell was a janitor, grabbing 30 rebounds and 15 points. The Lakers were overwhelmed by the Celtics scoring, as 6 guys scored 10 or more for Boston. But Elgin Baylor had been fed up with his shooting the past couple games. He cleans it up in Game 4, dropping 30 points and grabbing 14 boards. Minneapolis fought hard, but in the end, the Celtics were the greatest team ever assembled. Boston wins their second championship in Minneapolis, sweeping the Lakers 4-0. The league had finally settled on which franchise was the new dynasty. And although St. Louis had made a good argument with their success in recent years, dynasties win championships. And the score now was the Boston Celtics with 2 trophies, while the Hawks only had 1. The Lakers had 5 titles, but they were irrelevant now, as anyone on those early 50s teams had retired or moved on. Bill Russell and Red Auerbach now had a plan of being the only dynasty this league would ever see, but Minneapolis knew they were onto something. They now had one of the greatest ballers ever to build around. The Lakers had work to do, and they'll get started in the offseason, while Boston gets ready to defend their title again. Auerbach knows they're in the best position to win moving forward in this league, and Bill Russell was going to make that happen. You can find out how in next week's episode of Ancient NBA, when we talk about the 1959-1960 NBA Finals. Man, thank y'all so much for watching. If you learned something, leave a comment. Tell me how I'm doing. Tell me what you'd like to see from this series. I really like doing this, and I want to keep putting them out about every week if I can. So let me know if you're enjoying them, or if you want something different, if you want some added context somewhere, whatever. Just let me know. Talk to me, people. Come on now. Also, I gotta shout out Spa World. He has a playlist of videos where he focuses on each individual year and gives you a ton of facts on them. They're really cool. You should check them out. Follow me on Twitter, and yeah, check out next week's episode. And thanks for watching, y'all. Appreciate you. All right, I think that'll work.